Hey guys, and welcome to the latest edition of Train with Honor TV. And today I'm delighted to have a fantastic entrepreneur, a very successful coach and director of Strength and Success. It is Mr. Russell Jolley. Russell, good afternoon and welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me. A pleasure to be here.
No worries. So Russell, for the guys that are listening and the girls that are listening, just want to give a brief introduction to who you are and your background.
Sure. So yeah, I own a couple of strength and conditioning gyms, so called Team CC, and then I'm also managing director of Strength and Success, which is a kind of a business coaching setup for PTs and strength coaches, basically. So it's where we are right now. How I got here was a long journey that I often get too carried away with. So I used to run,
we've got a whole time.
Then I got into gyms.
Right, the more talking you do, the less I have to do. So that's in the.
Oh right, yeah, it keeps it easy, does it? Yeah, right. Yeah. You can go away and make a cup of tea.
Hey, I'm gone. See you later.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I guess I followed a similar route that a lot of coaches will do. Is that you like sport and you like gym early doors, right?
Yeah.
Then you kind of connect those two dots. It wasn't until I got to university that I connected the dots with rowing. So I went to Durham Uni, never rowed before, got there and, just tried it on the off chance. One of my mates literally dragged me down to the kind of first session. I was like, no, I want to go play ultimate frisbee. And then he was like, nah, come to this like swim test it was for rowing. You've got to do the swim test, otherwise you'll never be able to do it. You got to show that you won't drown if the boat goes under. Obviously.
Is that capsizing drill?
Basically, not as detailed as that, because it's pre any boats or anything. It's just take down to a swimming pool, jump in here like with your clothes on, jump in the swimming pool, tread water for 2 minutes, that kind of stuff. So you had to do that before they'd let you get in a rowing boat. Very sensible, very practical. Yeah. And then so I went and did that, started rowing, and despite having like the worst session ever, so Durham in the north, it's about -3. You kind of, when you splashed the water, it like froze before it hit you in the face type thing. The person in front of you. Yeah. So anyway, terrible first session, but just loved it oddly. And then, so just got into rowing there, ended up rowing for 4 years for the university for the latter 2. And then, and got introduced to strength and conditioning there basically. So that kind of, before Durham's rowing program was quite far ahead in terms of the structure. It was like an American uni. We had 5 full-time coaches, 2 boathouses, one on each 2 different rivers, like a full fleet of boats, full strength and conditioning support, all that kind of stuff. And it was a big squad and, training twice a day, every day. So that kind of cemented my love for strength and conditioning. And then after uni, so I worked for the university for a year as the S&C coach, then moved down to Bournemouth, initially just to work in the sports centre, and then got the S&C coach job there, did that for 4 or 5 years while I was doing my master's in S&C at St Mary's, and then opened Team CC as it was back then in 2010. So a lot of that overlapped. Yeah. Working for the university, doing my master's, opened my first gym. Wow, and then 2013. Yeah, it was quite busy, but like, you're just hungry, aren't you? Like 20, how old was I? Early 20s, just super keen to learn, implement, try and make some money, try and help people. And then went full time with the gyms in 2013. And then we got our second one at the start in January 2019. We actually opened the second one. And then, I'd done a bit of work with Strength and Success with Brendan over the years, but kind of consulting, just dropped in to help deliver an event or do a little bit of support here and there. And then, started to formally work as a managing director November 2019.
Wow, that's one hell of a story. And it's good that you delved into a new sport of rowing up in Durham. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but Durham's quite a big sporting university, isn't it? With the likes, because they've got the football, the rugby union teams in there as well, and they compete at quite a good level as well, don't they?
Yeah. So they last time I checked, when I was there, they came 4th in the Bucks tables. British University and College of Sport. That's that kind of championship. They came 4th out of all back then, behind Loughborough, Bath, and one other. I can't remember.
Cambridge.
Now I think they're sort of 1st or 2nd. So
Wow.
they were, they've chucked money at it. Like they've, redeveloped the sports centre, built more boathouses, for the rowers, but also brought on lacrosse, netball, rugby, cricket, tennis,
Right.
and like really invested in like some big headline sports,
That sounds pretty.
athletics.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Though, because this is one thing that a lot of, especially coaches nowadays, they don't tend to go outside of the traditional, do they? Was it football, rugby, athletics, and some coaches wonder why they find it hard to get into those sort of sports. But one thing I found is it's always like I touched on then. It's always good to go and have a look at the lesser known sort of sports, like your lacrosse, like your rowing, because realistically, a lot of the skills are transferable, and I think that a lot of coaches don't understand this, which is a shame, really. I mean, what were your biggest motivations for getting into strength and conditioning as opposed to going into a sports coaching career?
Good question. Because I did look at both. So when I was, finishing up my degree, and I was working at Durham, so I worked at the university for an extra year in the sports centre, kind of an athletic union officer person. I could still row, and I could also work and coach and that kind of stuff. So, I applied for like a rowing coach's job, and I would absolutely have done that and thrown my heart into it and loved it.
Yeah,
I'm sure, but that was probably just rowing specifically and not other sports. But what the strength and conditioning was more widely applicable. I could see a bigger runway long term for my life. Like I knew I wanted to be an S&C coach. I wanted to coach in gyms. I wanted to own my own gyms in the future. So it just allowed me that greater degree of variety, a greater maybe likelihood of finding a route. If you're a sports coach, the perception to me at the time, and was you've got a much narrower band of choices of what you're going to do. So yeah, it just suited me down to the ground really, and I liked the science, of strength and conditioning. I'm not saying that being a sports coach isn't a scientific pursuit, but I really enjoyed the science element of the physiology, the changes that you can accumulate over time, formulating plans, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, that sounds good. And you touched upon the science element there, and this is something that's becoming really, really relevant in professional sport nowadays. And I'm slowly beginning to see a lot of the coaches are looking a lot more at the science aspect, aren't they? Because realistically, I mean, I've gone into a couple of clubs this year, and they're all it's like you had with your rowing team up at uni. There's like five coaches, and they've all got different elements that they look in. So I suppose it's biggest bit of advice, I suppose, that you could give for a new coach going in something, I suppose, is go and do a bit of internship, isn't it? And just try and learn the ropes off other coaches and not be afraid to be part of a big team.
100%. I'd say when I look back, actually, so my career, I have never been part of a big team like that. When I was Durham at the time, the actual S&C coaching staff was quite small when I was there. Then when I went to Bournemouth Uni, so I moved down to Bournemouth, and that's where I was the kind of strength and conditioning coach for those sort of 4 or 5 years. And it was basically me and then just people that I started to bring in to kind of intern and part-time work underneath me. So I do feel like there's a lot of benefit that I potentially missed out on and should have worked harder to seek and find for myself in terms of working under a really experienced, old hand or quality person, coach in the industry, basically. To work under someone who's been doing it for 15 or 20 years as part of a team of multiple kind of, let's say you've got your kind of head coach running a big program, pick one of the big universities, and then multiple coaches underneath, potentially with a solid physio integration and, and then maybe like a lifestyle and an athlete management kind of integration as well. Like if you can spend a few years in that setup, that's just going to accelerate your progress so quickly. You're going to make loads of great contacts. You're going to be surrounded by people that are just like eating and breathing like performance and improvement all day, every day. And you get that, you can bounce ideas, you can get, without any weirdness between like any kind of competitive like oddness. You know how it gets sometimes.
This is it. It's getting that right environment, isn't it? Getting the right environment, the right people. And this is one thing that we find with strength and success and with strength and conditioning education. Is it is a big community of like-minded individuals that are everyone's there for each other, aren't they? Because everyone wants to learn each other. But I mean, would you say that going into it without any sort of guidance as such under a head coach per se, would you say that it's given you a bit more motivation to improve your studies and sort of self-learn a bit more? And giving you that bit more of a kick up the bum, so to speak, to become the better coach than because I suppose when you this is one thing. I mean, I remember at Cambridge United years ago under one of my first coaching courses I did. There's a guy, I'm not going to name names for legal reasons, but one of them, he's quite a well-known coach, a manager for this, and he took me from my level. Cambridge United fans know what I mean. He took me from a level 2 coaching first time round in football, and he just turned around and he was a dictator, and he says, right, this is how you're going to coach. You will do this, and there's no other ways around it. And I suppose when you work under people like that, you're brainwashed to an extent, aren't you? I suppose to expect that to be the only way to learn. So I suppose when you're doing it yourself, it's a great way of doing guide and discovery, and you've still got the opportunity to go on YouTube and the big thing for you obviously with the networking and learn in that way, which I think
100%. Like I think I always had the confidence that I could solve problems and go and learn, and hence why I wanted to go on. So I was the full-time coaching S&C coach at Bournemouth before I got my masters, and they actually paid for me to do my masters in S&C because I really wanted that knowledge. I really wanted to keep learning. I wanted to improve my craft, and just said to them, like, I want you to fund this for me, and they did. I managed to kind of push. Like, things have changed a bit since then. Obviously, the budget's kind of shrunk a little bit, but yeah. So I had. And a lot of most S&C coaches that I've come across have an inherent hunger to want to learn just all the time. This voracious, like, just thirst for knowledge, always reading all this kind of stuff. And that was exactly what it was like. So, I thoroughly enjoyed that prospect, and just having the freedom, I guess, like to just try things, to do what you want. But you have to be reading around and trying to learn and implement all the time. Otherwise, you would get stuck.
Yeah, definitely. Being productive is 100% the best way to go. And again, the more you network and the more you sort of understand your niche, I suppose, isn't it? You can identify who you want to help, connect with the people that are in the position you are, and so on. So tell me about the birth of Team CC. How did it come about?
Like I said, I guess it was always the plan at some point to. Well, so. Let's be the earliest plan was absolutely to go to the Olympics with rowing. So let's say I'm sort of 2 or 3 years into rowing, and I've been working hard. Like, so Durham's a collegiate university, so it has the colleges. So I rowed for my college first when I was just getting started for a couple of years, and then trialed for the uni team and got up onto that. So 2 years college, 2 years rowing. So at that kind of point, I was like, I definitely want to go to the Olympics. Anyway, it very quickly became evident that I was not good enough. So like, that is fine. I'm blessed, and I look back at myself as being blessed with, at least I wasn't good enough to think I had a chance for very long.
Wow.
If that makes sense. Like, I was good enough to be better than most people, and to compete in a good quality team that won a lot of stuff and worked really hard. And I could contribute to making those boats faster. But it very quickly became obvious that there was no point me signing over my life for 5 years, trying to go pro, so to speak, and go to the Olympics, and just constantly never getting there. So that was good. So anyway, I put that to bed. Then I knew I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach, and then the initial dream potentially was, follow that traditional ladder of work at a university, mid, low level, whatever, entry level post, then gradually work up to the bigger universities, then go pro sport best I can, and then get the big time pro sport job type thing. So at the time, because when I was in Durham, I was looking at Newcastle Falcons rugby, things like that. I was like thinking, I'm sure he gets, like, their strength coach gets paid like 120 grand a year. That's what I've heard. So that's what I'm thinking.
Isn't it? All the time they think they're a professional club. Whether it's
they must be getting paid shed loads.
Yeah, exactly. And until you get
but
in,
of course they're not.
No, exactly. Well, this is the thing, isn't it? You, as soon as you get in, I mean, I went to watch the Hornets literally about 3.5 years ago, and Hornets were a championship club at the time, and I thought to myself, I'll go in here, and it scared me, to be honest, because I've never coached rugby league properly in my life, apart from probably about 2 or 3 months with an amateur league in Rotherham, and I went to Hornets, and I thought, I'm just going to oversee what goes on here and just have a bit of an internship. But it surprised me how I could be thrown into a first team environment just by networking and just by having a conversation with that one person. And because I said this is what my aspirations and what my goals are, it happened. And I suppose when it comes to having such a high aspiration like you did with maybe going to the Olympics, when you've got that mindset and confidence, you are really your only barrier, aren't you, really? I mean, what would you say that it was that when would you say was the step that you sort of accepted that you weren't ready to go to the Olympics? Maybe was it just the case of it was just to keep yourself going, or was it a case of because you wanted to go into S&C, now was the time to go and do the S&C element of it?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that weighed in. So there was the end of my time at Durham, like having been there 4 years. There was the nature of my rowing. I'm only 5'11". Like my wife tells me I'm slightly less than that, but now I'm 5'11" because that's near 6 foot. And a 5'11", in fact. Yeah, exactly right. And then which meant I had to go lightweight. So there's 2 categories in rowing: open weight and lightweight. And lightweight men in the summer. So you have a winter kind of lightweight where you kind of about 75 kilos. You tend to compete at 72.5 through the winter, and then into the summer, your boat average had to be 70 kilos at the time. I'm assuming it still is now.
Right.
But I mean, I sort of live happily at about 88 kilos now. So the life of a lightweight is minging. Like,
would that be
super dieting all the time, like 4% body fat, underfed, angry, all this kind of stuff. So I just thought, there's not. Did it disappear then?
Very, very briefly. I think my internet connection's on and off at the minute, but it seems stable. Nothing seems to.
No problem. Yeah. So I just thought, the lifestyle was starting to wear thin after doing it for sort of 3 or 4 years, and then equally you just get to that trial time, that time where there's other guys in the squad that are off getting trials and going to, like, I rowed with Olympians when I was at university. They've since been to the Olympics and won and got medals and that kind of stuff. And you can just tell you're not there.
This is a scary. It does come to reflection, doesn't it? Self-reflection as to where you are. Compare. I think Brendan spoke about this in his seminar yesterday. It's knowing where you are, and then comparing yourself with the elite and what it is you need to do in order to get there. And when you sort of accepted that now's not the time, it is time to sort of move on. So when you opened Team CC, Russell, on that, did you have a specific target demographic that you wanted to work with, i.e. working with the rowers down in Bournemouth, or was it just a case of let's get the guys in and just introduce them to getting healthy and fit in an S&C capacity?
Yeah, so I was definitely 100% targeting local sports people. So not just rowers. There's not a big rowing scene in Bournemouth. Of course, I tried to kind of get into interact with them and kind of invite them into the gym. But as it happened, I had a few more contacts with like the local American football team that I was trying to build up. So our first session was actually with the local American football team.
Oh,
and it was a nice little starter. And kind of off that first session, we did a little 8-week, I think it was, program, something like that, moving forwards that way, just to kind of get a few people in. I also had I was part of the local powerlifting club. So once I finished rowing, I just flipped to the opposite direction and was just like, right, powerlifting. Let's go and stand still inside all the time rather than get freezing cold on a river. So that was good.
Good choice.
Yeah, exactly right. It was so much easier. And just, so focused on that for 2 or 3 years. and so I had a good connection with the local powerlifting club, so they would train with us at the gym. And really, when I first opened, I absolutely wanted it to be an athlete's gym. At the time, I had no understanding of marketing or anything that was going on. I was literally just looking at like Joe DeFranco and Mike Boyle and those kind of guys, and Eric Cressy over in the US, and thinking, well, I could just open one here, can't I? Like, I distinctly remember sitting on the beach with a friend of mine.
Well, if they can do it, why not?
Well, exactly right. Yeah. So yeah, I'm sat on the beach with a friend of mine, Bournemouth Beach, a sunny day, you know, eating ice creams, just like shooting shit, as they say, and with a stick in the sand, drawing out the plan of my 10,000, you know, my dream 10,000 square foot gym. Like, you know, so the AstroTurf here, the toilets would be there, the platforms would be there, that kind of stuff. Just like it was that easy, you know, just, oh yeah, it'll be this big and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And that was kind of, you know, the dream at that time was, well, I guess with you know, we made good progress towards it, that's for sure. And it's, yeah, it like, that was the dream at that time. Since then, I learned a lot about the need for, you know, marketing skills, business skills, all that kind of stuff to actually sort of make that dream a reality. But there's a pivot towards, you can't, the British market is very difficult to sustain a 100% athlete gym. Yeah. There isn't that same, it might go more this way in terms of now that universities are very expensive to go to versus, obviously at one point you got paid to go to uni, you got like a student grant, right? And then you get a student loan, but you're not paying each year necessarily in the same way. And then now it's obviously like fees, and there's an annual fee plus everything else. Yeah. So the sports scholarships, I think, will get bigger and bigger and more valuable. So maybe that will start to come in the UK, but it's not there the same way it is in the US.
Yeah.
Where it being great at sport could save your parents $250,000 in university fees if you get a free ride to university.
Well, this is what scares me about the British market, because you look at the American market and the way that their athletes, the way that, well, just the way that whether it's amateur sport or professional sport, you go into college, and it's like you look at American football, for example, the college kids, 15, 16, 17, they'll play American football in a stadium, and it's only college, and they're not even getting paid to do this. It's absolutely, it's unreal. And then in the UK, you're lucky it's like, I'll use Manchester as an example. We've got the big sports city, Etihad campus. You're lucky if you're able to go into to I think it's the tennis centre stadium, and use that to do a sports day. And I suppose it's having the right people in the right places, isn't it, really, as to how it influences the development of something. And I suppose in the USA, which is probably why they've got so many elite athletes like your Michael Johnsons and your Michael Phelps, etc. And they're probably more successful because they invest more money into it, they invest more time into it. The education's obviously key over there. But I was speaking to somebody a couple of months back, and they says the mentality of American athletes is completely different to here, because they want to learn. They want to know why they're doing plyometric drills. They want to know why they're only doing 30-meter sprints and not 800-meter laps. And if we could do that in the UK, I think that's great. And I suppose this is why it's so important to have education behind, as well as being in the gym as well, isn't it? It's educating the athletes as opposed to getting them in and saying, right, this is your hour a week, job done. Whereas if you can provide them with the why, that's when they're going to become better athletes and potentially go on to, who knows, maybe professional. So
yeah, that's, you know, absolutely. In terms of, you know, that general model of actually how you motivate people to put the work in to create change. Absolutely. You know, the why is the thing, like finding the why for each individual person, and then that's going to help create the buy-in for them to the program. And then if they understand what each kind of session is doing, where they sit in their long-term plan, how your plan delivers their goals, they're going to be bought in that way. Like, I mean, the American setup's crazy in terms of,
brilliant.
One of the athletes I coached at Bournemouth had just come back from America. He'd done a 1-year scholarship in golf at Ohio State Uni.
That's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, so he said their American football stadium's 110,000 seater stadium, so
Wow.
bigger. Yeah, is there? I don't know if there's a football stadium in the UK that's that big. You know, maybe Wembley, and it sold out ahead of the season for all fixtures. They only play a
Wow.
16-game season, I think, but they would like we're talking like $1 billion a year in ticket sales for just seats for college sport, and that is not uncommon. Like, so the money, and that's that. There's a weird thing going on in the NCAA at the moment, which is the universities, the colleges are making that, and that's not even TV rights. Like, that's just the ticket sales. You add TV rights, you know, they're hundreds of millions of dollars a year in TV rights to the colleges of the top team. So, which is why, yeah. So, but then it creates this weird thing where the athletes have got to stay amateur; they can't take any payment. But the colleges are making so much money off them that there's a bit of a weird demand. But equally, that's that thing of like, so it's as big as in many cities and towns in the US. Like, if we keep with the American football example, there's 32 American football teams across the entirety of the US.
Yeah.
So, and there's what, 300 million people there, give or take.
That's true.
So for a lot of people, their local, you know, like Huddersfield Town football team or whatever, would the equivalent is actually the university side. Is they would support their university side in the same way you would support your local football team.
Yeah.
So, but then having said that, imagine it's like a Premiership football side. You know, that's where they get that same buzz of the big team stuff is from the university. Then the high school, yeah, they would go and, you know, you get 5,000 people watch a high school Friday night American football game and pay to go there. So yeah, it's just a totally different setup.
I'd love for that to happen over here. I know there's certain universities that are slowly edging towards that, isn't it? Especially with Loughborough University, because a lot of I know rugby league and lacrosse, and I think even some of the football teams have gone down to Loughborough and trained there. And I think they're slowly beginning to enter that sort of map. But it would be nice if there was a lot more money. I mean, especially now in COVID, I suppose we're in a position where we're actually beginning to identify what the stronger sports are. Because I think, you know, you look at football and league, you know, Premier League teams are just about managing to stay stabilised. League One and League Two are there or thereabouts, but yeah, I suppose that's a different kettle of fish altogether, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing I've kind of observed from it was that, because I had this debate so many times. So I'm coaching at the university. Bournemouth, our team, like, managed to get to the finals of the Bucks football Premiership. So university level football, you know, football, biggest sport in the UK, give or take. It's the highest, you know, fixture of the year for university, and there's maybe 200 people there. Whereas obviously we've talked about what it's like at college American football, and the way I sort of perceived it was that a lot of the American sports structures are franchise based, which means that this goes into a lot of other stuff. But so you know, the NFL is a company in the same way the Premiership is, I guess, but the NFL franchises the rights to teams to those 32 teams, and people buy a team. You know, you talk about buying a team, but they have to. It's in the interest of the NFL to try and keep all the teams oddly equal. So they have a fair chance, and it very regularly happens in the NFL. A team is rubbish for a few years, and then 5 years later they win the Super Bowl. Well, except for Leicester, that doesn't happen in like the Premiership. In football. There's 5 teams at the top that are the only 5 that have got a chance. Realistically, there's probably only 3 of those that are going to win. You kind of know what's going to happen, apart from the odd shock one. You get something like that. So, but the way they preserve that parity in the NFL is obviously with the draft. And so the draft, the worst team gets the first pick each round, and there's 5 rounds in a draft each year. And they come from the university. So where I'm getting to in my very long-winded point is that the best sporting talent is inherently tied to education until they go professional, until they get drafted at 21, 22. Whereas in the UK, the best sporting talent is extracted from education as early as possible to go to an academy. So you're getting scouted at 9 years old to go and play, at Arsenal, Southampton, whatever city, their academy, and then school is just something that you have to tick a box on.
Yeah.
And they do a bit there, and they do a bit here, there, and everywhere. So, and everyone knows that. The public know that. The public know that the place they're going to see the best quality football is basically at the big clubs.
Yeah.
So that's where they put their money. That's where the attention goes. If we preserved that talent in the education system the way the Americans do, then you would start to get more eyes on university sport, and more eyes is more money.
Yeah, and that's highlighted in that new Michael Jordan film, isn't it, on Netflix, the Last Dance, which is an absolutely fantastic.
I've seen that, yeah. That's the second time I've heard it mentioned today, actually. So I'm definitely going to go and watch that.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've probably watched about three or four of the episodes. But you watch how Michael Jordan, I think it's Michael Jordan and one or two of the other NBA stars, and how they go. And as soon as you said about the fact that the Americans get to go to the universities and get first pick on them, it just struck a chord, because the Chicago Bulls, funnily enough, I think it's Chicago Bulls anyway, they didn't have a very good reputation within the NBA. Yet the moment I don't know what it was, but they had the opportunity to sign Michael Jordan. I think he was a bit shorter at the time. And everyone's looking at each other thinking, why have they just taken Michael Jordan? He's nothing special, sort of thing. But they took him, and obviously he become the man he is today, which is probably one of the most iconic, not only basketballers, but the most iconic athletes in the world. And it's absolutely. But I mean, what sort of trends? I mean, in the UK, what's the biggest sort of trends you see in athletes? Because obviously we spoke about the differences between America and the UK, and with the UK, obviously the picked out certain sports, of course, they're picked out from certain schools to then go into academies. What would you say would be the biggest trends across the sports, if any?
Biggest trends across the sports in relation to strength and conditioning, and how that's
sort of like with athlete development, and how they're tested. I mean, I know that it's going to differ, of course, depending on what level you got, because of the size of the team. It's going to. And I mean, is there any? I mean, in the position you are in at the moment, do you notice any sort of similarities between the sports?
Well, I mean, in terms of things that seem to have come up more recently, well, obviously there's much more GPS data, heart rate data, and velocity-based training data, where you're kind of moving away from just blanket programming for large teams. So like a single kind of cookie cutter program, and there's ways to personalize and individualize across a team using that individual's heart rate data and tracking data, I guess. And then the velocity based training is moving away from just the load when you're actually when you're in the gym now. What load are you putting on people? And it's less about necessarily what the load is and versus the velocity that you move the load in. Being the obviously velocity can make up for a lot of load. You can lift a lighter load quickly and still get kind of maximum recruitment of motor units, and still get a large stimulus with a lighter weight. But it's a good way to move athletes away who might be scared of weight. Traditionally people who maybe have attitudes where, I don't want to lift too much weight, I'll get too bulky, or it's too risky or something, towards, well, it's not about what weight's on the bar, it's about the speed you move the bar. And it gives you that kind of personalization of programming, plus more outcome-based training, which means that you tend to get a higher level of buy-in. So I guess it's personalizing the conditioning and lifting programming to be more specific to the individuals.
You've hit the nail on the head there with the specification to the individuals, because obviously different sports are going to require different movements. So obviously we'll look at going deeper and looking at different energy systems. To obviously a defender in football is going to probably train completely different to a winger, because a winger is going to be a lot more based on speed, because they're going to have to obviously get up and down the field as more. Whereas I suppose it's a centre back or a midfielder or a central midfielder would have to work on their upper body a bit more, I suppose, because they don't want to get shrugged off the ball. So it's really, I think it is important for people to understand that there is no one size fits all, is there? And I think, and again, we talk about the educational side of it, and it is educating the individuals as to how they become a better athlete. So I mean, tell us a bit more about your move from going from one having Team CC in one location to the other. What was the reasoning behind that? Was it a case of just wanting to expand, or was it the case that there was a need for where you couldn't have any more people in there, and you literally had to open another one, or was it you've got the vision that you now want to have a chain of
100%. That's it, basically. Like, I want to have multiple locations and, you know, have a greater impact, help more people, like help other coaches, make more income, you know, the long and short of it, build a bigger business, that whole kind of package. So the plan was always to have multiple. So we, the pool gym was the first one.
Yeah.
We opened that in 2010, and we were, you know, we'd filled it. I said, you know, not quickly, like, you know, like I said, it started in 2010, no idea what I was doing, and just kind of bumbled along for 3 years while I was doing all the other stuff, working and doing the masters and stuff. Full time in 2013, started to kind of improve and increase just by it being full time effort. Then, you know, really started to push on and really learn about business over the next few years and marketing. Not to say I'm like a master businessman or a master marketer, like, but I just got better. Like that, the limiting skill set was no longer S&C knowledge; it was business and marketing knowledge, and so started to learn about that. So, you know, it took us a good long time to kind of fill it up. Anyway, kind of end of 2017 into 2018, we're pretty much full, and I'd never actually stopped looking for more units when we got the first one. I just always kept looking, and then but started to pursue it, you know, very deliberately from the end of through 2017 probably into 2018. And the unit we ended up getting was not really what I thought I was going to get, because the pool is on the western edge of a conurbation, like, and very about 2,000 square foot, super cheap, like kind of in the middle of nowhere, just the middle of some random houses. There's this weird little kind of 3-unit thing that it was awesome because it was no risk. So it was really cheap, no risk. There's no way it couldn't pay itself, and, you know, allowed us to grow and make a load of mistakes and grow slowly and all that kind of good stuff, which I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah.
And then, so once we were full, I was really looking to go to the other side of the conurbation and get the same again. But after looking, like I said, I never stopped looking, and after really looking hard for a good year or more, just could not find locations. You know, the council won't do change of use, the landlord doesn't want you, they're too expensive, they're not available, there's no parking, all these kind of things that I'm sure a lot of coaches have come up against. And I was sat in a cafe, and one of the members of the pool gym just sort of came in. He was like, "Oh, actually, there's a unit coming up that you might be interested in," because his company was a lettings company, commercial lettings company. Anyway, it's in Bournemouth town centre. It's in a shopping centre. And I'm like,
perfect.
Really? Like, this is okay. And he said, yeah, well, the landlord is going to put a blanket change of use on the whole floor that it's on for any use, because it's been empty for 8 years, 10 years, or whatever it is. It's been empty for ages, and we've got some kind of potential interest in a few units, but do you want to come and look at it?
Yeah.
So I did, went and had a look, and they, at the time, there was about, I don't know, 30,000 square feet, no, total floor plan of the floor. Yeah, maybe 20 to 30,000 square feet. And there was probably about 20,000 available.
Nice.
And they were like, so anyway, I'm talking to them, and it kind of, how much do you want? So initially I'm like, oh, about 2,000 square feet, just about this. And they were like, oh, that doesn't work. Anyway, by the time we'd finished, because, you know, literally, like, because of where the soil pipe is for the toilets, and, you know, where the fire exits are, by the time we'd finished, I've ended up signing for 5,000 square feet. Which,
oh, wow.
Which was, which was interesting. You know, like, looking back on it, like, I probably should have checked myself on that journey a little bit more, really. But kind of thought I could justify this. Yeah, you get excited, right? You get, like, all caught up in it. You 100%. Think that, well, I can have a nice, because the pool unit is amazing, but it never got that, because it was a kind of warehouse. It never got the nice finish that I wanted. And this new one is brand new. It's big. I could put better changing rooms and a bit of chill area with sofas in reception, and a couple of offices for the coaches, and still have 3,500 square foot of gym.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and so I mean, the gym is awesome. It's literally my dream gym. There's like massive. There's a 30-meter Astro down the middle. That's like 4 meters wide for most of it. It comes a bit narrow at the end. There's 8 identical like half racks with like everyone's got full Olympic setup, so bumpers, bar, bench, suspension trainers, dips, all that kind of stuff. Then there's a 4-bay rig as well with all that same setup again. So we've had 45 rugby players in there from Bournemouth Rugby Club, like smashing it up for a big old session. Like we can handle big teams of people like that with 3 coaches. And it's absolutely rocking. And it like literally, you stand there then, and little tear rolls down the cheek because you're like, holy crap! Like
it does look really nice. You look at, I look at it. I've seen it on Facebook, and it is a fantastic, hell of a facility. And you look at what it is, and you can see, it's got so many uses, which is obviously a testament to all the work that you've put into it, and the fact that you can have 45 big butch rugby lads in there. That speaks volumes, doesn't it? And
well, that was the thing. And we when we were planning it out, there was a plan to, we thought long and hard about the space and how you move around the space and where you put stuff. And over the years, we kind of refined it in the pool gym, which was initially like the platforms. The Astro was down the wall, and the platforms were kind of a third of the way in, and the racks were against the wall, and that kind of. And it kind of worked until you had 10 people in the building. And then in 2,000 square feet, you felt busy with 10 people. And of course, when you're doing a commercial, like when it has to be commercially viable, I nearly called it a commercial gym then. But then we of course know that's not. But
you'll never be a commercial gym. God, you've got more about you than that.
Yeah, well, exactly right. I try and where it's about the training experience is obviously what we're all about. But it's not commercially viable at 10 people in 2,000 square feet. So we kind of, moved everything. We put the Astro down the middle. We put the racks against the walls, and we put them as half racks, not full racks, because that preserves more space. You could go as far as putting rigs down the walls, but we sort of didn't go rigs. We wanted to maintain an identity as a strength and conditioning gym. And for me, rigs equals CrossFit, and that's no opinion on CrossFit, but I wanted to, and it is a bit semantics. It's a bit splitting hairs, that, but it's like when you know. If you know what I mean.
You know what you want. That's how it's got to be.
Yeah, exactly right. And also what I want is when an athlete walks into the gym, I want them to feel at home.
Yeah.
And, I want them to walk in. So, a person who's potentially graduated from university, like, because this is that bit where it starts to move into making it commercially viable, is that actually a great target market for us is someone that was an athlete through university, and they maybe played a bit afterwards, but they've kind of fallen off it. They've just had to work, do family, all that kind of stuff, and then a few years later they go, you know what, I'm not happy with this. I need some time for myself. I want to train somewhere that feels like it used to, and that's what I want us to be. So when they walk into the gym, and I've had feedback along this, so it makes me feel good, is that's what it feels like. They walk in and they're just like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Like, I'm home now. And then we want to treat them like they're an athlete. We want to program within reason. Like, we program for a year at a time on our main programs. We, run proper coached S&C focus sessions.
Yeah. Oh, you're still there, Russell?
And allow capacity, but for it to be busy, but everything's got a place. Everyone knows where they should be. No one has to go anywhere to get anything. Like, everything's like, obviously, like the dumbbells that you use are there. The dumbbells that they use are over there. The dumbbells that these guys use are over there with them.
Yeah.
So that you're not like traipsing across the gym, nicking the only set of 30s in the whole gym and running, lugging it back over to the corner to grab them.
It's
3 sets of
having
30s.
That order. It's having that order. It just broke up a little bit. It just broke up a little bit at the minute, but I think it near enough went straight into what you're saying about the setup. And I think that's the most important thing, and that's what's differentiating, of course, the commercial gym with a private facility where you want the athletes to be, because anyone can be an athlete as long as you've got the environment, you've got the and you've got the aspiration. And the fact that you've got, and obviously the biggest difference is you've got everything in one space. So you don't need to worry about feeling shy, feeling intimidated, because you've got to go to the other side. And again, you've got to think about time as well, haven't you? I mean, if you've got athletes going in there and they come into the gym, and let's say that they come into the gym for half an hour, then they've got to go down, they do some speed training on the beach, for example. You've got to take that into consideration as well, haven't you? And have a good understanding of time as well. So I mean, how did you get, so just to sort of wrap it up a bit, I mean, how did you sort of go from, so of course, obviously you want to work with athletes predominantly, and you've got a big interest in development as well. How did that lead to you going into the great work you're doing at the minute with Strength and Success, and setting up the mentoring program and that with SNS?
Yeah, I think it's a fairly natural progression, because it's still coaching. You're just coaching a different group of people, and you just think of where you can have impact, what people need help with, and if you've got a skill set to be able to deliver that help, then why not? And so it was fairly organic, really. It was just a case of been coaching athletes and members of the public for 15 years, and you see a bit of a slightly different challenge in terms of, I'm super passionate about the running gyms and the business of fitness, and I can see that there's a massive market of people of coaches that really struggle with that. And it's like, well, I've been there, I know exactly what this journey's like. I can impart my knowledge there in the same way you would do if you were coaching a squat or how to run faster or jump higher. It's just the same sort of thing. So it just made sense. Like Brendan Brendan was my strength and conditioning coach when I was at Durham.
Right.
So that's how we met.
Right.
And we kept in touch all the way through. Like, he's always, he's kind of, he's been a friend and a mentor and just someone that you run by. And it's just like organically came out of conversation. We were chatting about it, and it just was a really good fit for him and for me at the time. Yeah. So I came on board. That's
pretty good. So do you want to sort of give the guys that are listening and the girls that are listening a bit of an insight to exactly what's available through Strength and Success at the minute?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, we kind of core offering is for strength and conditioning coaches who are just kind of getting started at the moment. So into the business side of things. So it's called the Strength Coach Business Blueprint, and it's basically kind of a 12-week education course that has a full kind of suite of modules. And the mixture of modules is there's a detailed kind of business fundamentals section. And my goal with that was to try and give coaches the knowledge that I wish I'd had early doors. I said I spent 8 years just kind of messing around, getting nowhere. Well, I've tried to condense that into just a real nice modular structure to teach you all that about the financials, about a bit of projections and profit and loss, the economics of kind of projecting out the 2-year business plan, help you kind of form this plan so that you actually know where you're going. And potentially you have a plan that you can actually present to a bank and say, I'd like a loan. And they believe you're credible, and it's not just like, I kind of want some money because gyms are cool though, So it sort of starts with that, just getting the fundamentals of business, and then the specifics of business in strength and conditioning, the different models you can go into, and then it goes into actually actioning that plan. So a big part of it is on building your profile, building your products, so actually how you coach people, and then how to promote, because marketing and sales is this thing that no coach. It is hard, and you tend to be a bit more, as a coach, you tend to be a bit more in the shadows in terms of you're not too worried about being in a limelight all the time. You don't want to talk too much about what you do. You don't want to come across as too egotistical. And importantly, a lot of people, including myself, you get worried about this kind of fear of rejection. So for that reason, you don't really promote your services. You don't really market. You don't really sell, potentially because you've had some bad experiences of being sold to in the past. But so the whole point of this is, how do you do that in a way that feels good, in a way that actually delivers value for the person you're selling to? And how do you get confident with those skills? How do you know how to do it? Structures to follow so that you can basically build a 50 grand pay rise is the goal. So, you can set yourself up to earn 50K more in a year if you go through this program.
That's how I do it.
That's our main one. It's a good one.
That sounds pretty good. I mean, it's definitely worth having a look at, because to get 50 grand straight away in your bank within a shorter period of time is great. And this is where you identify where the best coaches are, because those that have made the best coaches are always the ones that have made the mistakes in the past, and they're the ones that are learning and that continually learning. Because sometimes, unfortunately, you do go to a club where there's been someone that's been in situ for 60 odd years. Not to say they're a bad coach, but they are still going off what they learn on course one. So the best coaches obviously are constantly revolving and constantly evolving. So where can people find out a bit more about Team CC and about the SNS? Where's the best way for the people to reach out to you?
Sure. So for SNS, we've got two main spots. Obviously, the website, strengthandsuccess.co.uk. Or Brendan and I run a free Facebook group, Strength and Success Accelerated, with Brendan and Russell. So that's like, you join it, there's about 1,100 coaches in there, and that's just where you can go and ask questions, get input on kind of the business side of strength and conditioning. And then Team CC, the main thing at the moment is our Instagram. So at Team CC Gym, you can go on there, just get a flavour of what we do, what it looks like, kind of content that we put out, people we work with, all that kind of stuff, basically.
Sounds great. And guys, the groups that Russell's mentioned there, they are definitely worth a good look at. I mean, they've helped me a lot. They helped me a lot with my business. So definitely go and check them out. And those of you that are down on the coast, definitely go and check Russell out at Team CC. And
yeah, right.
You're guaranteed that you're going to have a great experience down there. So Russell, I just want to say a massive thank you for coming on this afternoon. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and it's been great to get an insight to your journey into where you are at the moment. And hopefully everyone will be getting in touch and you get some traffic as a result of this. Yeah,
let's hope so. Thanks, mate. I really appreciate it. It's been good fun to just chat for an hour or so and just get into it and relive the glory days.
Mate, 100%. To be fair, I could probably sit down here and go on for about an hour. So
yeah.
But that feeling when your mouth starts getting dry and you're thinking, I've definitely been speaking a lot longer than I need to.
I need a cup of tea. Over here.
Mate, it's got to be done. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks again, Russell, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, perfect.